Good afternoon, good morning, good evening from wherever you are. This is the University of Liverpool online webinar, and I'm so excited to talk about a special topic of my own interest, which is corporate social responsibility. And today we're going to talk about this topic with a very good expert that has been actually doing her dissertation paper with the University of Liverpool online on CSR. We're going to have a moment to talk about that quite fully towards the end of this webinar. But before anything else, my name is Michael. I will be your moderator for today. And although CSR is a big topic, and it is a hugely covering topic, we're going to focus today on the relationship of corporate social responsibility and multinationals, because it's important for us to understand how these huge companies, mammoth companies that have reached global level, are actually responsible and are held accountable towards the environment that they're actually working, towards the people that they're working with, and of course towards the economical responsibilities that they have to ensure a sustainable business towards themselves and towards the society they actually work in. And without further ado, I'm going to actually go through the agenda for today, and you're going to kind of get an idea of what we're going to cover. So we will be talking in depth about CSR, but of course we're going to be covering the importance of CSR as a strategy and as a field of an area. We're going to also look at how the CSR, how this area of CSR looks like right now. We're going to look at how we define a good CSR strategy, what are some challenges there that multinationals are facing, and of course a very important thing, how do we keep multinationals accountable? And then we're going to look at the case study by our guest speaker, who has actually dedicated her professional life so far in the study and the development of this field. So let's get right into it. I have today with me Fatima Homor, all the way from Hungary. Welcome, Fatima. How are you?
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about this amazing topic. I agree with you. I'm really fine. The weather is awful, so it's much better to sit inside and to listen.
Yes, the weather is also a bit cloudy and rainy here in Amsterdam. Where are you actually in Hungary right now?
I am in Székesfehérvár, which is my hometown. I just moved back to here months ago. It's a very small town with about 100,000 citizens. Very lovely, peaceful.
Okay, I challenge all of our non-Hungarian audience
to spell it.
Repeat the name of your town. A warm welcome. So, Fatima, tell us a bit about yourself, about where you come from, how are you, what have you done with the University of Liverpool Online, and what's your area of expertise, and maybe a bit about also your dissertation.
Thank you so much for asking it. I have been in business for more than 12 years. I started my career, as you can see it on the page, at the HBO in marketing. But after that, after 6 months, I quite quickly changed to finance, actually social finance. And I was working with the pension system, with the education system, and with the healthcare system in Hungary, connected to B2B, to insurance companies, investment companies, banks, and etc. And we were helping individuals and corporations, small and medium-sized organization, to have a very good employee benefit strategy, to have a good structure for pension system, healthcare system, and so on. And after social finance, after 8 years at the same company, I had a big turning point in my life, and my mother passed away. And after that, I moved to Dubai. I needed a huge change in my life, which was a perfect decision. I will never regret that. And I started to work for Emirates Airlines according to my plans only for 1 year, which I did so. After 14 months, I quit Emirates Airlines because I wanted to dedicate myself fully to my MBA studies. It was very intense. It was actually suggested to me by my former university, the BA studies I did at the Oxford Brookes University, and my professor suggested me the University of Liverpool. One of the major reasons was obviously that the UK universities have the best ever reputation in the in the high-level education field. And second of all, it was very important for me that I didn't have to travel all the way to Liverpool every single month or quarter or semester to do my exams, but I could do everything 100% fully online, which was amazing. Got the ebooks, professors were amazing. So first of all, thank you so much.
Well, it was our pleasure, and there you go. You just summed up all of the benefits of studying online with the University of Liverpool online. So, thank you for that. But I do have a curiosity. How did you how was the interest in CSR triggered? Where did it come from?
Actually, I really wanted to gain a profound knowledge about how CSR brings an incomparable advantage for the multinationals, because I really want to motivate them to get onto this pathway and to transform their organizations and put the emphasis much more on social good creation. I know it from my own experience, from experimental knowledge and studies as well, that CSR really brings incomparable advantages, not only for multinationals, but also for small and medium-sized organizations. But of course, multinationals have far bigger impact. And it is measurable, and it is a sustainable growth. But first and foremost, they have to realize that it is never a paid PR, it is never a marketing activity, because it's not going to work this way. And it can bring this sustainable growth only if they embed the CSR into the core of their business.
Perfect. So there you have it. Right from an expert that has been studying, it is important to look at CSR, whether you're a small company, whether you're a global company. And we are going to start the series of questions. We actually have started a bit answering already the first question. But before we get into it, just so I give you also the house rules, let's say. We have sent Fatima a series of questions. We are going to concentrate and focus on those questions. Nothing has been scheduled or rehearsed, but it has. We have some questions that we're going to focus on, and we'll make sure that we get through those questions in about 30 to 35 minutes. At the end of those 35 minutes, we're going to make sure that we open up the panel for a live Q&A. So in the meantime, if you have any curiosities, any questions related to what our conversation is going to be about, make sure you put them in the Q&A box. And our producer, Joe, will make sure that he will send us the questions, and we'll have time to actually go through them one by one. So yeah, let's just dive into the conversation. As we already have covered a bit this topic, it was interesting to mention that when I was going through what you said, that you say that you believe in doing good while doing well. Can you kind of explain to us what this means for you?
For me, it means a very good example from Australia, for instance. I made an interview with the CEO of the local Konica Minolta. His name is Dr. David Cook, and he also conducted a huge CSR research throughout his PhD studies. And when I asked him why did he commit himself towards the topic of CSR, he told me that after a while, he just wanted to really feel that he creates good while he has this amazing power in business, being a CEO of a great company. And they changed the factories, they changed how the employees, the workers can work for this organization. They have CSR professionals working for Konica Minolta. Amazing transformational change what they did. And of course, they, for instance, almost cut the whole marketing budget because everybody wants writing about them. So this was one of the major motivational parts which brought me to CSR more and more deeply, that I found lots of amazing professionals all around the world, from New York to Barcelona, from Zurich to London, who I could interview throughout my studies.
Okay, that is brilliant. That is brilliant. So you are quite the expert right now. You've done your research on CSR. You've had talks with a lot of different people within the field. In your opinion, what are the key components to corporate social responsibility? What do we look at when we say corporate social responsibility?
Thank you for the question, because this is first a very, very important topic we always have to clarify, because many people might have heard about CSR, but usually they can't really identify it with, let's say, these four components, which we can see on the page here: the economic, the environmental, the legal, and the philanthropic aspects of CSR, from which the philanthropic aspect is the first and most important, and I will talk about it later why. But to add something else as well, CSR is and means something different for each and every organization, based on what does that business actually do, with what kind of questions and answers they want to relate to, and what is so important for the CEO and for their employees and for the causes they want to support.
Okay. So these are the four components, and I was also quite interested in the legal aspect. So there are a lot of people who are talking, you know, about the bottom line, about the triple bottom line, about the economic, about the environmental, and about the social aspect. But how does the legal aspect involve or play a key role in CSR?
For instance, just a quick and not a nice example, but still in Hungary as well, and in the Central Eastern European countries, unfortunately, it's still an existing problem. That there are lots of people who work on the black market, black or gray market, which means they are working, they get the payments, but in an illegal way. They get it into their pockets without paying any taxes after them. Which causes problems both for the governments, of course. They don't get enough tax from the small and medium-sized or multinational organizations. And it's also a problem for the workers, because of this situation, they don't have the support of the healthcare system, and they won't get pension funded by the government. This is one of the major legal aspects, which we also face in Europe. So it's not only true for the so-called underdeveloped countries.
Okay. Well, it's important to actually think about these things, because a lot of companies just think philanthropy is what I need to do for CSR, or I need to plant a couple of trees and, you know, I'm doing CSR, but it is more complex as you can actually see it.
Absolutely.
The next set of questions are actually related to, okay, but why should multinationals care? Why is CSR so important? Why should they actually even look at this as part of their strategies, as part of their day-to-day activities? Why is it important?
Most probably, if we look around in our own country, whichever country we are talking about, we can realize that the millennials, the so-called millennials, who we are, for instance, I am also a millennial, the people who were born, yes, welcome to the club, who were born after 1975, the X and Y and Z generations, we get, thanks God, more and more power, and our purchasing power and decision-making influence is growing. And because of this, we know it from statistics, and we also know, if we look at ourselves from very inside, we are deeply connected and much more interested in organizations and businesses, products and services, where we know that the organization really cares. They are check on their suppliers. We don't really want to buy products where we obviously know that these products were tested on animals and they were killed. For instance, I never buy products like this. And since this purchasing power is constantly growing, and it is going to hit a point in 5 to 7 years all around the world, no organization can afford not to care.
It's true, and I really like this idea that you mentioned, that we live in a glass box business era, because, yeah, social media, the internet, communication has brought so much transparency to business in general. And I know that there are still a lot of issues there with transparency and how multinationals are actually reporting on what they do. But we also see a lot of WikiLeaks types of events, and a lot of whistleblowing type of events, where more and more governments and more companies are held accountable. So this is quite an interesting way of looking at the glass box business era. No one is actually, no one can actually hide anymore behind different things. everything becomes more and more transparent.
And it doesn't worth it to hide it. One of the recent examples here actually with this glassbox business was with Google. Most probably many of us have read about it when this amazing guy put that report and wrote about how interesting Google's idea is to educate women on IT professional. But actually, I would say that in this glassbox business era, this is quite obvious that this kind of information, these kind of articles will come out, and the social media won't keep them in a hidden way.
It's true. And social media has tackled, you know, more problems around the world, has even, you know, overthrown different regimes. And social media will also be there to help uncover all sorts of mishaps that multinationals are doing, especially when it comes to the environment and when it comes to the some of the actions that they're doing against social welfare, against different societal groups. So it's true. So be careful, multinationals. Be careful, CEOs out there. We are watching. The millennials are coming.
Agree.
Okay, but then also a bigger question is, why haven't we seen multinationals more engaged? I have studied as well in my university years at an economical school in Romania. I am Romanian by origin, and I did also my dissertation paper on CSR, and that was more or less 7-8 years ago. And I still see a slow implementation of CSR within multinationals. Of course, I see a lot of good things happening with smaller organizations, smaller businesses, but still CSR as the main strategy for multinationals is still yet to come. Why do you think this is? Why do you think we've not seen them more engaged so far?
Thank you for this question as well, because I believe here we have something which we definitely have to do actions very quickly, as quick as possible, because first of all, the leaders, the actual leaders of large multinationals aren't personally committed to CSR. I have heard, for instance, about a large multinational sitting in Zurich, where the CEO really loves running, and because of this, he motivates the other people also to go for a run, and they create marketing activities based on this. But actually, the money with what they collect from these activities by collecting miles and etc., this is a finance corporation, they spend much more on marketing activities. So they are kind of trying to use it, but they don't really hit the end results. And second, the top management at multinationals are from a totally different generations. They were taught that the major KPI is to put the money into the shareholders' pocket, which from my point of view and from many from our generation's point of view, this is just a result. The result of a good action, the result of a sustainable business. And in that case, we can count on sustainable profit. And third, there are some multinationals which really mix up CSR with paid PR and marketing. And it will never ever work for any kind of organizations, nowhere in the world, until they don't transform all of the areas of their businesses. I mean, from the cleaning lady until checking on the suppliers, everybody should feel that CSR really exists at that organization. And when we come up with problems that, for instance, yes, we are really a CSR committed business, but on the other side, all of our co-workers are underpaid, and we have a very strict hierarchical rule inside of the organization. So, for instance, a newcomer, a trainee, can never ever talk to the CEO because, oh my God, the CEO is so far from me, I can never ever talk to him or her. And here is another thing, that it's usually a him, which we also know that from the S&P 500 companies, the last time I read it, maybe 4% of them were only women who are the CEOs there. So that's definitely, again, a huge problem here.
It's true. Yeah, it is. I mean, looking at it, it does start with people and how people look at things and how people uh, actually take actions and take responsibilities, not only for their own action, but of course for the actions of the companies. You are right, and I've seen it also in my experience that when a leader, a team leader, a manager, a CEO cares about how the company does things, and that also transforms the culture of the organization, and it kind of trickles down to everyone working with that organization. Especially, it's important to think about that when it comes to these huge structures within multinationals. It has to also come from top management. It has to also come from each individual person, because they can do individually their own, they can also bring their own impact, but it is helpful to have the CEO on board, or the manager,
Absolutely.
or the team leader. True. How do we define a good CSR strategy? So we've talked about the components, and we've talked about why is it important, and we've talked about why should multinationals care, but then what makes a good CSR strategy? How would you look at this?
When I was conducting an interview with the PepsiCo from Turkey, that was the first spot. It was a couple of years ago already, with the corporate communications director. We discussed that the CEO is a key point first, because until the CEO is not fully committed, all the other leaders, corporate communications director, HR director, whoever, chief executive officers from the finance perspective, and etc., until the CEO is not fully committed, these other leaders might try, what they won't achieve any serious success without having the full support of the CEO. So that's first and foremost the most important. And second, we have to start with the philanthropic aspect and establish the CSR inside of the organization. Because while we gain our co-workers, our colleagues, for the better aspects of CSR, then we can gain our suppliers and customers, clients, consumers, for commit with us and stay loyal with us. And any CSR, let's say, implementation shall run for the long run. So we shouldn't plan, let's say, support a cause or donate for any kinds of NGOs, charitable organization, or any other projects for 6 months or for a year. It's not going to have any effects on the organization's long-term goals. But if we embed it, it should be a whole transformational change, started with the co-workers from the philanthropic point of view. And as I said before, it should never be mixed up with a paid PR activity or with marketing activity, spending 10 times more on marketing than what we spend on supporting the cause. And last but not least, whatever we choose, whatever we want to commit to at our organization, it has to be aligned with the business itself. So for instance, if we are, let's say, a production company with mines around from Africa or from Asia, we definitely have to commit our causes supporting these kind of opportunities, businesses in Africa, in Asia, support the co-workers and their families, their education, and so on. And also it has to be aligned with the cause. So we have to ask these people what kind of help do they need. Because many times organizations commit to something, they believe it's a great idea, we will do it so. But when I asked many NGOs, civil organizations, the UNICEF, the UN, when I interviewed them, they told me that organizations tend to choose projects or support or donate to some cases which are not even that important, but they believe so, that it's so great to support or to donate to these causes. But on the other side, the need is somewhere else, and they would need something else. Most of these organizations, they have the expertise to build this kind of projects, but they need some support, and they can tell us what do they need. So first we have to ask.
It's fascinating. It's true. And yeah, I was also thinking about this while we were doing this research on this topic, and there is no out-of-the-box solution. It does depend on the company, and you were right at the beginning of the webinar saying that it has to come from the company, from the top management. It has to be embedded. It has to be agreed on, and it has to be committed to by a lot of stakeholders within the company. But there is no out-of-the-box solution, and everyone that works in multinationals and is thinking about getting involved in social programs needs to understand where to best go to actually implement a sustainable strategy. What is the market that they work on? How old is the company? Because it's easier to implement something where you have a new company, where you have a startup. A lot of startups are doing amazing things when it comes to CSR, but it is a bit difficult with older organizations because you already have a culture that is already implemented there, and you need to convince a lot of people. And then it's also, yeah, the kind of business that you have determines also the CSR strategy that you can use. But there is no out-of-the-box solution. It's just a matter of principles, and it's just a matter of how you implement them and what the consistency is.
Absolutely.
The next question talks a bit about, or asks a bit about, how do multinationals implement the strategies, but more it looks at what are the challenges, because yeah, we can say today I don't know, a big company, I am the CEO, I want to implement a CSR strategy starting from today. But what do you think would be some of the challenges that multinationals are facing?
As I mentioned it before, the multinationals have to start their CSR strategy from within with their own employees, because otherwise any other CSR projects and opportunities will make the feeling inside of the organizations that this is again a push from upside, that we have to do something. For instance, we have to go out and plant some trees. Because until the co-workers, the colleagues don't feel comfortable at that organization, we cannot ask them to get committed to any kinds of new ideas we come up with. And then second of all, we definitely should have far more women in decision making. First of all, because we know it from statistics, we don't have to question it anymore, that the empathic level of women is higher basically than of men. Men have other amazing advantages. We don't have to compare ourselves whether we are better or worse, but we have more deeper empathy inside. And because of this, we definitely need far more women in the decision-making roles. And because of this, they have a different perspective on how solutions should be carried out. And I would add something very important. We also should involve people with disabilities. Because when, for instance, a company is trying to focus on solving problems for people with disabilities, we also have to ask them, and the best way to ask them is when we incorporate them into our multinational organizations. So we invite them and we involve them and we start working with them together. So we really have the different spices of the people which can put together the amazing dish at the end of the day.
Okay, that's wonderful insight. I haven't even begun to think about yeah, this aspect. You have to involve people with disabilities because they would be also a source of insight on what you can do best and how. Because I see a lot of programs and I see a lot of probably companies doing a lot of it. I'm guessing that not a lot of them are thought through from the perspective of a person who was going through that experience. So yeah, thank you so much for that insight. That was interesting. Okay, so we've seen what CSR is, and we've seen why is it important, how companies can implement a good CSR strategy, and what are the challenges there. But then multinationals are big, are these huge entities, economical entities. Some of them are even richer than entire countries. Some of them have political power, some of them have economical power. What can we do, each of us individually, to hold them accountable? Because at the end of the day, it is about accountability. CSR does not work if the accountability aspect is not there, if we don't keep these multinationals accountable. So in your opinion, what can we do? What can what can, yourself, Joseph, what can we do to keep multinationals accountable?
I had an amazing professor. I don't know which module he was leading at the University of Liverpool. And when I started my CSR research, he asked me, okay, so what do you personally do from the CSR perspective? So let's say, how are you a good citizen of the world? And I was thinking like, wow, what a hitting question. Thank you for asking that. So do you use your car every day alone and go around the city and commit to emissions? Or do you use, for instance, makeup products which are not tested on animals and so on? And do you waste water all the time because you just want to have a 30 minutes long shower, even though there are people who don't have clear water at all? Or do you, for instance, collect your trash in a recycled way, or the only thing you do is to expect it from your company to do it in a recycled way? So definitely we should start it from inside, from our life, and then we can also keep ourselves as role models for others. We don't have to push it on to anybody, but if we do it so, I know it from my own experience as well, there will be people who commit to it. Or at the same time, I'm a woman, I love doing shopping, but in the last couple of years, I decided not to buy any products from companies who do a harm at their factories in the Far Eastern region. For instance, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, I visited these countries and I saw the people, how lovely they are and how happy they are when we bring our factories there from Europe. But they have to be really careful. How do we take care of these people far on the other side of the world? And just as you can see here written, we definitely have to involve young people into the decision-making processes. Many of us face the challenge to be hired by an organization, and we are put into lower level positions just because we are young and we have only a couple of years of experience. Though there are many millennials who have the passion, who have the knowledge, who have a different perspective, a totally different perspective than another expert has, who has, let's say, 20 or 30 years of experience at the age of 45, 55, or even 60 and above. These young professionals must be involved into the decision making, because otherwise these multinationals will never ever speak our language. We speak a different language. We can see it at our homes as well. When we talk to our parents or to our grandparents, usually we don't even understand each other because we have a totally different emotional and experimental background. And if these companies want to sell to millennials, they have to speak the language of the millennials.
It's true. At the end of the day, yeah, millennials are here to stay, and they're probably going to be the next generation of decision makers. So if multinationals can figure out a way to involve them already in the decision-making process, I think that that would be a huge step forward towards, you know, creating a better world for everyone. We have, you know, grown up with technology. We understand technology. We understand what are the pluses and the minuses that we are getting. We understand how we are actually affecting the environment. We want to be more useful. We want to be more informed. So it's true that if multinationals can figure out a way to tackle this challenge, to see past just the short years of experience, but more the enthusiasm and the willingness for us to actually contribute, then I think that we would be better off. And you know, you talked a lot about individual responsibility. I've read also a study, and I think that there are a lot of studies that kind of point out to the same thing, that said that for you to start putting something as a behavioral factor in your life, you have to constantly and repeatedly do something for about 27 to 30 days. So if you do something for 27 to 30 days, theoretically it should be part of your behavior. So think about that. Maybe next time you are using a plastic cup, you can use a normal cup. Maybe next time when you're taking the trash, you can start actually separating your trash before throwing it. The small things that if you do them repeatedly, within a month, it actually becomes a behavior. And I think that that's how companies can also work. If enough people do something within the company that is sustainable, that, you know, involves different stakeholders from that society, I think that on the long term, it will become the behavior of the company as well. And it has to also come from individuals. Yeah, definitely. Good. So we've went through all of these aspects of CSR. We've looked at the components, the importance. We've looked at how multinationals are building up their strategies, what kind of challenges they're tackling. I would like to challenge us to actually look a bit ahead into the future. And I would like to ask you, Fatima, from your perspective, how do you think that the new era of CSR looks like? What's the future of CSR for us?
I love your questions. Definitely. Thanks God I'm not alone, or let's say we are not alone with this thought that the future of CSR, or actually the future of business, I believe is when both you and me, we can buy products, we can pay for services, and after buying them, after purchasing them, we can have this extra good feeling that we added something good to our society. When we look at, for instance, not only the startups, but there are also many other small and medium-sized businesses and multinationals as well, who started to transform themselves from the within, and smaller companies became social enterprises. These are for-profit companies, not non-profit ones, but they committed their business goals to something which creates social good. And I believe that when we start spending our money, more and more we will do something good with our society, not just live with the passion of doing some shopping. That's first of all one of the most important things. There is, for instance, the Tom's company. Most probably many of us have heard about it. It is also available here in Hungary as well. And when we buy a pair of shoes there, because of its one-for-one strategy, a child who cannot afford having a pair of shoes will get another pair of shoes as well. We pay the same amount of money as we would pay for another brand, which is not that sustainable or not that much creating so much social good. But at the same time, we get a great quality. We know that these shoes are coming from the same good quality factories as the other ones. And at the same time, we created a social good for that child as well, who would never ever be able to buy a pair of shoes otherwise. And for many other companies, the new era of CSR definitely means that they become far more responsible for many other subjects. For instance, if we look at from the customer point of view, customers will definitely forgive much faster to these kind of organizations, like the Toms, for instance. They make a mistake, they will apologize, and we will, as the customer, say, don't worry about it too much, because we know that you are a good organization, you commit yourself to social good, and we will identify this company with the doing good while doing well attitude. And because of this, even after crisis, even after a social economic huge crash, these companies will survive much faster and much easier than those companies who constantly create legal problems or economic problems.
Brilliant. And you did mention, and this is something that we also have to maybe mention as well, that you did mention that you see a world full of social enterprises and B corporations. In fact, the B corporation certification, this is something that I've actually learned in this current position that I work with, is a certification given to companies that are actually involved in doing social good. So for anyone who is working in multinationals, or for any multinational who is interested in, starting a CSR strategy, this B Corporation certification is actually a methodology where your company or your multinational can receive this certification and can be audited in a way in which it says about the company that you are working for a social cause and you are producing social value as well, besides the day-to-day money and stakeholder care that you do. So definitely, I would also love to see maybe a world where all multinationals or B corporations are certified. That would definitely be a very, very successful day for me.
And the B Lab is working on it very hard, actually. I just talked to the B Lab CEO of Europe 2 days ago, maybe, and they are trying to extend their services and involve more and more multinationals. B Lab is a non-profit organization, and they are trying to commit as many of them as it is possible. And I can also say that if we look at Unilever, which is undergoing the process of becoming a B corporation by 2020, they are very busy with this transformational change. But at the end of the day, it brings always incomparable advantage for them, because it is not comparable how social good, how good footprint do we have in this world. It will be also something unique, because as I said before, it has to start with the philanthropic aspect, and what makes the differentiation between any kinds of organizations, it's always people.
Definitely, definitely. And this was a good also transition to actually talk a bit about the paper that you wrote on corporate social responsibility. So yeah, this is a good point to actually mention it. So Fatima, your research paper was on corporate social responsibility for multinational enterprises to gain incomparable advantages. With this paper, we've actually finished the MBA here at Liverpool Online, so congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Just to mention, because I'm also curious to see what was the process and how did you come about actually doing this, could you kind of tackle these 3 points? So within your research, what was the hypothesis that you were looking to settle? How did you conduct your methodology? And of course, what were the findings? I'm really, really curious.
Thank you for this question as well. I really loved my research project, and I had actually 3 hypotheses which I wanted to answer. The first hypothesis was exactly what I just mentioned. It was that CSR brings incomparable advantage to any organizations which commits to it deeply and profoundly. And the second was that the stakeholders, both the clients and suppliers, tend to choose and stay loyal and forgive to those organizations who are socially responsible. And my third hypothesis was that CSR definitely opens a new era in any organization's life. Because if we look at the actual statistics, for example, Forbes has been measuring the CSR activities for many companies for more than 10 years. They stated that last year, I think it's a 2016 number, already worldwide, 42% of the customers base their purchasing decision about how on how organizations are good and how good CSR activities do they have. And to be able to reach this was also part of my hypothesis, CSR shall be embedded into the core of the business and gain the employees' commitment first and foremost.
Okay, and how did you conduct your methodology? What did you do to gain the insights?
That was amazing. I really loved it. I came up with an idea which was interesting. My professor first questioned it, but after that I could definitely convince him because I wanted to conduct 25 interviews with large multinationals, starting from CEOs with companies like Google, Sony Pictures, Ferrero, the Doge holding from Turkey, PepsiCo, and so on. So lots of other huge multinationals from both services and production companies, and worldwide, because I didn't want to focus on any specific regions, because in that case it will give us an answer which is true for that specific region, but cannot give an experimental knowledge about how does it work actually. So what I did is I contacted these 25 CEOs or corporate communications directors, and some of them were the HR directors of these companies, and I didn't ask them any questions. I told them what the topic is, and I let them talk about it. And it was totally obvious that those CEOs or chief executives who were aware of the topic, They could talk about it for an hour without even stopping them. They were coming up with new and new ideas. They explained to me how good they are, how many amazing things they do. And those CEOs who don't really do any kind of activities like this within their organization, only paid PR or marketing, even they couldn't even answer the questions. So after seeing this, it was totally obvious for me that there is a huge difference between CEOs. Some of them are totally committed to it. They can talk about it without questioning. On the other side, there were some of them who were, even after I asked them some questions, trying to have them actually to come up with an idea, they couldn't even answer the questions because they were not really aware what CSR means. There were even CEOs who asked me what CSR means. So that was negatively surprising for me, of course, but anyway, it can happen. And I also asked many NGOs, charitable organizations, and I made an interview with the UNICEF UK and with UN colleagues as well from Hungary and from the UK and from Barcelona. So I was trying to contact many NGOs from Africa with the HEPS and the ROP organizations from Rwanda and from Uganda, and with other NGOs from the Far East, and I was trying to compare them. What do they need? Because that was the other part, to see what kind of support does an NGO need in Africa or in the Far East or in Europe. For instance, I also had conversations with civil organizations from Germany. So the findings were really impressive. I loved them. And then after that, I conducted a survey as well. 111 people answered my survey within 3 days. This was an online survey, and I asked them about their organizations, where they work. So these were people who are not in leader position at these companies. Okay. And I asked them how much do they know about the CSR activities of their organizations. It was pretty challenging. And unfortunately, it was obvious that those companies who don't embed the CSR into their organization, the co-workers don't even know about it, which means these kind of projects won't be supported from the inside of the company.
Okay, so it's quite clear.
It is.
So if you're working in a multinational and you don't know about the CSR strategies that your company is actually doing, probably it's because it's not really committed to CSR. But again, anyone can influence organizational culture. Anyone can have a chat with their boss, with their CEO, and you can actually be the change you want to see in your company. Why not? And if you're listening to this, you're probably very passionate, as we are, about CSR and how can CSR be actually a solution to our current societal problems. With this, Fatima, thank you so much for the conversation. We have reached our question and answer time. So I've had Joseph send me some of the questions that you guys have posted, and I will read them now within the next few minutes so we can actually go through some of them. And bear with me, I'm seeing the questions for the first time. I just want to see where to start because there are quite a few questions here.
Ready for any of them?
Yeah. Okay, corporate social responsibility. Is corporate social responsibility a luxury for the developed world and large multinationals? How do small companies and enterprises in developing countries develop CSR when profits are so vital?
Perfect question. Thanks so much. First of all, because I also measured how much is the difference between the developing, and the so-called, which I hate this expression, the underdeveloped countries. And I found something very interesting. To establish a CSR strategy, it is far much better and far much easier in the developed and in the underdeveloped countries. And the worst are the so-called developing countries. For instance, my country, Hungary. Why? Because these developing countries usually have the past from the socialist and from the communist era. And since the millennials are not yet there to be the major decision makers, our ancestors, let's say, they still have the idea that First, I have to get. Second, I have to get. Third, I have to get. And maybe after that, I will consider some giving. And second of all, to answer the other question, which is about the money, whether the organization has enough money to implement CSR, it doesn't need money. I do CSR strategies nowadays with my own company, and I can see that we can create a whole transformational change for both a small one-person organization, for a small or medium-sized organization. Even if it is close to going bankrupt, we can even save the company, and there are many examples for that. Why? Because, as I said before, the customers, the clients are much more ready to save and to forgive to any organization which creates social good. So if you see your organization having troubles money-wise, then definitely turn to a professional who can turn your organization towards social good, and you won't believe your results, because money will be always a result, as I also said before.
There you go. So living proof that it doesn't have to be about money when it comes to implementing a good CSR strategy. Thank you for that, Fatima. And next question is actually related to some things that you actually mentioned. Would you have some examples of companies that are doing a very good CSR strategy work or CSR policy within their companies?
Yes, let me start with one of them I mentioned before. PepsiCo in Turkey, the corporate communications director Didem Shinik, she gave me the opportunity to make an interview with her, and she explained to me that since they have a new CEO, she is a woman from India. She committed herself to social good creation, and when she entered the company, she said that we are not going to do here anything without social good creation. So that was very straightforward, and the whole organization started to be recreated from inside. And for instance, in Turkey, what they do, since 2003, they have opened every single year a new school in the southeastern part of Turkey, where most of the children don't have any accessibility to any kinds of schools, and it's a war area there, absolutely full with very unfortunate happenings. And especially for girls, it was almost impossible. So in 2009, they started another project which supports girls are going to school, and they have adopted, I mean, the company has adopted children, girls or girls, and they support them from every single aspect of their life, to go to school, to go to secondary school, to go to university. They even make sure they have at least 1 year of experience after leaving the school, and they pay for everything, for their bus tickets, for their books, and they also sit down with the families, convincing them that let your girls go to school. Can you believe how much these people get committed to PepsiCo? Amazingly, you don't have to advertise it. Everybody knows about it there.
Fascinating. Very, very nice example. Really, really cool. So yeah, there you have it.
I loved it too.
Do governments not need to be lobbied to create an environment in which multinationals more willingly take part in CSR?
I'm not sure if I get this question correctly.
So I think the question means, do we need to actually convince governments to invest themselves in a framework where they actually support CSR within that country? And if that's so, who should probably lobby these governments, and who has the responsibility to convince them to actually invest in CSR as a strategy as well?
Important question again, thanks for it. First of all, the large organizations such as Microsoft or Apple, they have far bigger power and much more money than many governments have. So for instance, Apple could buy our Hungarian government from one of its packets. So to be honest, yes, governments have an important role to play, because definitely these large organizations should commit to them and work together with them, because governments, of course, have much larger impact on the local education system, on the local insurance and pension system. So the social benefits are coming from the government in many cases. But at the same time, governments are not gods thanks God. So we can also solve and create the CSR strategies for our own organization. And in case the local government doesn't support it, we can even become one of the first stars in that country, showing and becoming the role model that here we are, you can follow us, and we won't lose our advantage, because first of all, we were the first. Second of all, if we give a helping hand, it will always create an extra advantage as well, with our reputation, with our customer loyalty, with our employee loyalty as well.
It's true. And at the end of the day, each and one of us has a very, very specific role to play. At the end of the day, we are the consumers that decide which company is going to profit next year and which company is going to fail. So we also need to keep that in mind, because our consumer choice actually determines the faith of a lot of companies. And if we invest in companies that have CSR strategies and are also giving back, then that's how we're actually going to contribute directly or indirectly in some certain cases to making sure that CSR is the next era for these big companies. Okay, a question says, if you know, and probably you do because you've done a lot of research, what is the balance between companies who say no to CSR versus those who say yes towards applying a CSR strategy and implementing a CSR strategy?
Thanks for this question as well. There are amazing numbers, thank God. There is a guy whose name is Jim Stengel. He was the chief marketing officer of the Procter & Gamble for more than 10 years. And he really committed himself towards trying to explore how much the so-called brand purpose means for large organizations instead of brand promises. So we are saying something, but actually we are not going to meet them. And they conducted a 10 years long research trying to find out how much more, let's say, money does it mean for social brand purpose-based organizations to act like this and to operate like this. And what they found is amazing, and they are not alone with these findings, thanks God, is that there is an amazing difference between the S&P 500 measurements for 10 years compared to those companies who create social good, and the difference is 400%. So those organizations who commit themselves to social good, they have produced 400 times more return on investment than those companies who are in the S&P 500. Or there is another one, IBM has started an amazing CSR project a couple of years ago. They started it because of an intentional good. They didn't even advertise it. That's why most probably many of us haven't even heard about it. But if you check it on Google, you will find it. Because IBM has created a 300% return on investment gain due to their amazing CSR, what they did. So there are lots of numbers. And there is also the Kenexa, which is a research organization from London. They also measured it for the local UK-based companies. I am not sure whether it was for multinationals, maybe it was for small and medium-sized organizations, and they also found out a quick growth rate of 19 times higher for socially good organizations than for those who just want to put the money into the pockets of themselves or of their shareholders. So
Brilliant.
There are quite a few numbers about it.
Brilliant. Yeah, there we have it. We are heading to the last question, actually, and it's quite an interesting one. How can we be agents of change in our organizations if we face resistance to change from our colleagues?
Whew. Yeah, tough question. First, I would say quit. Do your own company or join another one. Maybe you remember previously we have mentioned at this webinar that we started to care much more for what kind of organizations do we work for. So for instance, if it doesn't give us the meaningful feeling of our position, then we tend to quit, and we tend to say that thank you, but we are not going to work only for money. We want to work because of creating a better world, creating real social value, creating real environmental value. And if our organization just doesn't care and the resistance you feel it's too large, I would say definitely maybe you should find another organization. If you say you are gonna stay because, let's say, you are afraid of being unemployed, since in this world it is quite a big challenge even to change the position and to go to another company, it can be scary, but I would say you go better home and sleep better if you work for any organization, even if for lowest salary, if you have a meaningful role in that organization. And I would definitely send a message to your colleagues or to your leaders at that organization. Change it, because it's not going to lead you to any sustainability. That's for sure.
It's true. And at the end of the day, if we don't feel that we have an added value to the company, if we don't feel that we the values of the company is linked to the values of you know, ourselves, then we're just going to be miserable at our work, and we're just going to go day in, day out, and not really be excited about what we're doing, be grateful about what we're doing, and also be you know, empowered by the things that we are actually doing. And I think that's very, very important.
Yes, and performance level will be nowhere, by the way.
Yeah.
There are also measures about it.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Fatima, for that. That was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Today's webinar was about corporate social responsibility, how multinationals are actually engaged into this new era, and what does the future look like. We have a handout for you guys. Don't forget to download it while you log out, or before you log out. And please also make sure to fill in the survey that we have. We are always learning from you guys what we need to do better and how we need to do it in order for us to engage more and more people with these wonderful conversations. Fatima, thank you so much. If you have any final words for our audience, this would be the time for you to say them.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I would definitely pursue anybody to start doing research, or you can always turn to me, ask any kind of questions. I'm about to search for and find a PhD program where I can also continue my researches in corporate social responsibility. And I believe that more and more young people should also be involved into research. Women should come with us to do research and be beautiful on the stage, beautiful and smart and intelligent. So we should spread the word and learn more and study more about sustainability growth. Thank you so much for your listening.
Thank you so much. Definitely do that. And also check Fatima on LinkedIn. She has details there. And if you want to connect to her, go ahead and do so. Thank you guys so much for joining. This has been a University of Liverpool online webinar. And I hope to see you guys soon, either in class or back in another webinar. And until then, all the best of luck with whatever you guys are pursuing. Have a good day ahead.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.